communication expert has made the claim that Meghan and Harry seem to have made a lot of PR mistakes recently. Mr. Chris Punch, the PR expert, has explained on the royal side, while they worked for the royal family, they had the palace PR doing the job, and by Jove, they did it well. Hardly any salacious stories about him were reported, and the ones that were quickly glossed over. The palace PR curated an image of a happy, cheerful, playful prince. But then, when they left to live in America, Sunshine Sachs was their PR company, but it wasn't that good. They made some poor choices, such as going to Uvalde and trampling over war graves for a photo shoot to spite the Queen, when they were refused to have his wreath laid at the cenotaph in the UK. In actual fact, it was deeply disrespectful to the families of the graves they trampled over for their photos. Now, of course, Archewell is doing their PR, and Scooby-Doo is being used as a mouthpiece on Twitter for the two of them. It seems like their current trend is to promote and spend millions of dollars doing so on podcasts that turned into wine fests. Of course, they got Netflix to do a series of more whining and complaining. They promoted that widely made fun of book, and they have backtracked on things that they previously said, on camera no less. Let's think about Harry's recent trip to the UK, for example. He came in through the front door of the court and he was there with all the waiting media, so that showed that he did those walks intentionally. And also, that whole trip blew up in his face because Harry did not have the top-notch, paid-for by taxpayer security, in spite of the fact that Harry has filed a court case trying to demand that security. Meghan has been bizarrely quiet since Christmas. She did not come out and publicly support her husband when he was out there promoting his book. I mean, the media has been filled with rumors about Meghan, but she's mostly been ignoring those rumors. What has she been up to? Maybe she's finally figuring out that if she disputes everything, that only drags stuff out. It seems like Harry is the one with a heavier chip on his shoulder, and now he's very vocal about it. But still, he keeps backtracking on things that he said in the past. Now, both of them have said some pretty ugly things in magazines and in interviews that a good PR company would never let them say. But ever since they took over their own PR, clearly they haven't been very good agents for themselves. In the Cut article, Meghan said that she could say whatever she wanted to about the royal family because she never signed an NDA. To me, that sounded like a clear threat. But then she acted like she was so upset when the Queen passed away a few days later, and she even did a deep curtsy to her coffin. Then weeks later, though, she did a mocking curtsy on her Netflix show. They also accepted that award for fighting against institutional racism within the monarchy, and then, while Harry was out promoting his book, he claimed that they never even said the royal family was racist. Well, if that's true, why in the world did they accept that award? It seems like their PR people are trying to portray Meghan as some quiet, behind-the-scenes intellectual who's doing some kind of fancy intellectual podcasts. But the reality was the podcasts were stolen ideas. Meghan didn't really even interview her guests on the subject matter. So I think Meghan should really try to avoid pretending to be someone she's not. And then it seems like Harry's PR people are trying to portray him as this poor victim despised by his own family and their world because Harry did not receive the extra sausage when he was a child, and he had to sleep in the smaller bedroom in Balmoral or wherever it was. Another thing is, in the last Invictus Games, Meghan made it all about her. She made the intro speech, and she took over events where the participants should have been center stage. So Netflix was involved, of course, and Meghan and Harry made money from appearances, and they had their private jet and other expenses paid for by Netflix. But this is supposed to be a charity. All proceeds are supposed to go to the injured service people. Harry's involvement has become an absolute joke. He should be fired. Let's be honest, Meghan Markle is no intellectual. She just used that stupid podcast series and the Netflix show to attack the family she married into. And Harry, well, I think it goes without saying Harry is not an intellectual. He's just whining about childish perceived slights, like a little baby. Maybe he should spend some more time focusing on the Invictus Games, but maybe he needs to try to make it about the servicemen and women instead of himself. The only way that Harry is useful in promoting the Invictus Games would be opening and closing statements praising the competitors. And as for Meghan, well, I don't really know where she should go for the future of her podcast series, but clearly her subject matter was way over her head. For example, she named the series Archetypes without even understanding what the word archetypes means. At this point, it looks to me like Meghan and Harry are so far removed from what they're supposed to be doing for these charities that it's actually hurting them and the charities involved. If they could just step back and make it all about the recipients, all about the work of the charities, then maybe they would get a little bit of credibility back. Their own PR team, Archwell, is not helping them at all, but they are the ones in charge. They're the ones calling the shots. And another expert has weighed in, saying Sunshine Sachs is a great PR agency, very well respected with some very famous clients. The thing is, your PR will only be as good as you allow it to be. If you refuse to listen to your advisors and insist on going against their advice, you get what you deserve. Probably why they kicked her and them to the curb, along with the unpaid bills. And some people say that Harry might be more intelligent than his academic record suggests. I suspect his struggles at school were more of an apathetic approach to schoolwork, and he couldn't really focus on anything that he didn't absolutely love. Well, alright, I can understand that, and the idea of being at Eton surrounded by these really smart kids cannot have been easy for him. So it looks like he fell into the role of class clown. That would have been easy for him. Everybody does want to be good at something. Let's look at Harry's background. I mean, he grew up surrounded by deferential people, and he came from a broken home with a mother who was gorgeous and charming and lovable, but she wasn't very stable. That is not a recipe for success. And also, let's remember that Diana would often unburden herself on her kids, and then he lost her. That was such a horrible shock. Obviously, he has a lot of anxiety and depression at the very least. The problem is, Harry really needs good routine and structure, which is why the army was so good for him. It seems like his brother had everything when Harry returned to civilian life. Now, a lot of his complaints sound very immature. His brother got the biggest bedroom at Balmoral, for example, or his brother didn't want to spend time with him when they were in school. He felt like he was losing his brother when his brother got married, and he wanted to be invited to be around the young couple more. It does sound very jealous. Harry is always trying to shift the blame, though. It was William and Catherine's fault that he wore that Nazi uniform to the costume party, in spite of the fact that he bought it without them knowing. Harry apparently didn't even know that the term pica was an insulting racist term because he said, "Oh, other people say it." And he considered the 25 people he killed as chess pieces, but he claims the army taught him to think like that, in spite of the fact that he has had such a long time to reflect on his actions. And come on, the army does not teach people to think like that. There has got to be a disciplined approach to dealing with enemy combatants. Otherwise, really horrible things will happen, and people high up the ladder end up facing war crimes. Harry is simply unrealistic. When his father talked to him about being unwilling to support yet another family, surely he was alluding in part to the fact that Meghan was spending an absolute fortune on her clothes. I mean, I remember she spent something like £1 million in a single year on her clothing. Harry claimed that he felt like saying Meghan didn't eat much and she could make her own clothes. What in the world is he talking about? Obviously, there is a disconnect here between Charles expressing some concerns and Harry's ability to understand that without viewing it as unfair. Now, amongst it all, there is also a lot of hurt feelings. Harry's hurt because he was always second best, and nobody could blame him for wanting to make his own way, but this stuff just doesn't make sense. I mean, what Harry has done is just ridiculously vindictive. It has become a very serious situation. I can't help but wonder how a couple of people and their complaints can cause so much trouble for so many people. Somebody has to pull the plug on the two of them. The royals need to distance themselves from Meghan and Harry, and maybe the government should issue some type of statement about the chess pieces comment.